Well, more on the budget and the Celtic League's representative with me, Paul Moffatt. You've been quite loud already, saying this is not what you want to hear coming out of Mr. Tier's mouth. Can you elaborate why you don't like what he said?
Well, I identified immediately that a lot of what he was saying was smoke and mirrors. There's nothing at all really in this budget for hard-working people who've been struggling on the island for the last several years. He made a great play of benefits he was going to increase, but most of the changes that are mooted are much further down the road, 12 months or more away. When I got into the minutiae of the statement last night, I mean, I was absolutely appalled to find that one of the first groups to suffer, because people will suffer from this budget, are people on tax credit. That's people who are on fixed incomes below about £9,500. They're going to lose £100 of the £500 tax credit they get at the moment. And at the present time, quite disgracefully, he admits in the statement that the government haven't got a plan yet for when this is phased out in 12 months' time. A great play was made of the fact that there was going to be a lift of the tax threshold from £9,500 to £14,000. But the fact is that all that's going to do, it will of course assist people on very low incomes, but it's also going to disproportionately hit people then in the bracket, I estimate, between about 17,500 and 20,000.
This is next year's budget that you're talking about, of course.
Next year.
Yes.
Now, let's be plain what these people are up to. As I said, in fact, at the IoM Dawn commemoration at just after Christmas, this is a government that's deeply unpopular. It didn't wake up and realise it till the statements were made then, and then there were the protests over closures and taxes and levies and so on. So it's been desperately rowing backwards. This budget is now being presented in a way, and I've got to give Eddie Tier 100% for presentation, even though there's no substance in it, but it's being presented in a way so that people will believe that this is a government that cares about them. And isn't it cynical? We're only about 18 months away from an election. Next year, when the changes kick in, and that £14,000 effectively is implemented, we'll only be a few months from the general election. I've never seen such a cynical act of electioneering as has gone on here.
But they say, of course, that they're not. I mean, we asked that very question, that they say this is for the best of the Isle of Man. I mean, would you have a better plan yourself? Could you go in there and do something better?
Well, I was interested to hear Eddie throwing down the gauntlet after the IoM Dawn commemoration and inviting people to come in and run the Treasury for him. Well, to be perfectly honest, I don't think they could do much of a worse job than he's doing at the present time. But let's be clear, when the chips are down, to be perfectly honest, for a community, you have got to start looking at putting some of the pressure on the people who can afford to pay. What this budget does is it puts pressure on people who are, if you like, the squeezed lower middle. It does nothing at all about the wealthy and well-heeled. And what it sends out as a signal to those people is it's business as usual. We're going to look after you and the rest of the population can suffer. Remember, there's already been levies and charges on people. Social housing rent has been pushed up. Now, quite cynically, in the budget yesterday, there was a great play by Eddie Tier on the introduction of means testing. You know, there's going to be means testing for child allowance and so on. And no doubt people will think, well, that's justified. But this is a government hypocritically that steered away from means testing for social housing and simply implemented, without any sort of a plan, large increases in rents on people, I think somewhere in the region of 10% across the board. Now, honestly, I don't think they've got a plan. I think this is, as I described it in our press release, he's trying to be a fiscal Houdini, a great illusionist, if you like, and he's towing the rest of the cabinet, and for the most part, Tynwald along with him, because they all know that they're deeply unpopular at the present time.
Well, you're not holding back here on this one though, but the fact is, if you go for these the wealthy individuals, we keep hearing that they will take flight, they will move if they're squeezed or asked to pay more, besides this 5-year now plan they've got on giving them the tax cap.
I'm not talking about, as was famously said, I think once in the UK, as squeeze them till they squeal. I'm saying that there are people within the community, people who can afford to pay more. Certainly, I don't see anything. Once you get beyond that changes in the threshold, once you get beyond about 21 or 22,000 pounds of an income, everybody's going to be about, I don't know, 150, 160 pounds worse off, and I don't see anything wrong with that. When you're starting to get up into reasonable earnings, if you like, maybe if there is a crisis, we should pay a bit more, but government should do its thing as well by getting its act together. And I don't see any pressure on, shall we say, senior echelons of government to tighten their belts. They're always wanting to tighten the belt of the people who are the least well off. And at the moment, I'll be perfectly blunt with you, they're tightening the belt round the throat of the population of the Isle of Man. I'll be as blunt as that.
Okay. But again, could you do better if you had the same figures in front of you? I mean, it's okay criticising, but could you go and offer an alternative, a real alternative that would balance the budget?
Well, I think obviously a great deal don't get the idea, because I've dealt with these people for years, long before Eddie Tear came out from behind his bank manager's desk and decided to go into politics. I was dealing with these folk. And for the most part, they're very committed people and have been to the community and to the island generally. But most of what they do is driven by what their civil servants present to them as the options. And I don't doubt, if you like, that if they had engaged in a proper conversation, remember the big debate they had, if they had involved themselves in a proper conversation with sections of the community, then there might be some more ideas there. But bear in mind, Paul, for many years here, and Miles Walker instigated it, we had a National Economic Development Council on the island, which actually sprang out of an earlier committee, the name of which escapes me at the moment, but that brought together sectional interests from the business community, the trade unions and politics to try and thrash out a direction for the island. And okay, it had a bumpy ride from time to time, but it tended to work. This government has shut off dialogue. So it ill behoves people like Eddie Tear to stand up and say, well, anybody who can do any better should come into the Treasury, when they've shut down the dialogue over the years. I'll go in and talk to them anytime.
Okay. What would you give it out of 10? I'm asking people, as a budget number on performance out of 10.
I'll tell you what, I would give Eddie 10 out of 10 for presentation. I'd give him 1 out of 10 for substance.